Okay, we've just learned about the actual user interface for Revit, and the next thing to do is to get started with a drawing. So to get started with a new project in Revit, again, you're either going to click Open and open an existing file that you have, or you're going to click the New button here under the Models heading to create a new project. So we're going to create a new project. Browse for the correct project template, choose the template that we want to use, and click OK. And it brings us back to our workspace here. So the white screen here in the middle is your workspace. This is where you will model your project. When you're modeling in Revit, you want to remember to always model in a clockwise direction. So for instance, when you are putting walls in your model, you're drawing walls, you want to drag your cursor in a clockwise direction to pull those walls and place them. If you go opposite, if you go in a counterclockwise direction, then the actual structural elements and building elements will be on the incorrect side of your model. For instance, if you draw counterclockwise, then the chipboard that's supposed to be on the interior of your space will be on the outside facing the trees. So you want to draw in a clockwise direction so that the information that Revit is putting into your model is in the correct location. Always draw in a clockwise direction. The next thing you want to remember in Revit is do not use the escape key. So if you're familiar with AutoCAD and you've used AutoCAD before, you're probably familiar with using the escape key, and that's kind of like your go-to to get out of a current command. Not in Revit. In Revit, you want to use the modify button right here. So that is your escape key in Revit. Use the modify button. The next thing you want to remember is to always keep your model here within these 4 elevation markers. So these 4 elevation markers are there by default, and you want to keep them there. They are your actual exterior elevation markers. So we want to begin modeling here, kind of in the center of these 4 elevation markers that you see. The next thing to remember is that Revit defaults to feet and not inches. So you can type in specific dimensions and distances in Revit as you begin to draw. And all you need to do is type the number for your feet. For instance, if you want to draw a wall 12 feet 6 inches, you would type 12 space 6, enter, and it would draw a wall at 12 feet 6 inches for you. So to get started with our drawing, we want to make sure that we're on the first floor view here, first floor plan view, which is right here, and it's bold by default. And that's where Revit tells you to begin anyway, so you should be there by default. The next thing that we want to make sure of is that we're on the Architecture tab. This is where you go to get started. The Architecture tab is where we can take a look and select a walls. Right here is our wall command. And we can click on, if you click on the drop down arrow, you'll notice you have some options here for different types of walls. We want to go with architectural to get started. Now, if you just choose and click on the icon itself, the picture of the wall, it takes you straight to that architectural wall default. And then you'll notice that your properties palette changed. The information in your properties palette changed, as well as your ribbon. You have a green modify place wall option here, changed color, and we have some options here that are specific to placing our wall. So we want to choose the correct type of wall to use for this model. Start correctly from the beginning and you have less changes later. Now, not to say that you won't make changes, and you can make changes, but with Revit, the point is to model from the beginning your project as it should be. So you should have some idea from the beginning what your model looks like, or what it's going to be, so that you can make choices based on correct applications. So if we pull down the arrow here of the basic, where it says basic wall by default, we have other options. We're going to start with the exterior wall. I will use an exterior brick on wood stud. You have other options located here, and you could choose based on your specific project. We'll click on exterior brick on wood stud and begin drafting You click once and pull in the direction that you want that wall to go, which is clockwise. Remember, clockwise. You'll notice that there's a blue temporary dimension in place. That tells you how long the wall is at that point, and it changes as you move your cursor. Now, if I wanted a wall at a specific distance, for instance, if I wanted a 40-foot long wall, outside to outside, then I could, first of all, check right here in my menu bar, the green bar under Modify Place Wall. Make sure it says Unconnected, and my location line, oh, hold on, Modify, I need to do that first actually. Click on the wall command. Here I would make that change really quickly before I actually start my wall. So I want it to be unconnected, the height for the first floor, I could change that to whatever I want it to be, but 20 feet is typically going to be too tall for a first floor level. So I'll change it to 10 to get started. And then here, since I know the outside parameters, overall dimensions of my exterior walls, I'm going to change the location line to finish face exterior. And that's going to make it so that my overall dimensions are constrained to what I want them to be. I have my exterior brick on wood stud wall selected. Click that, begin my wall, and pull in the direction that I want that wall to go. I'll type 40 feet, and let's give it some inches just for demonstration purposes. I'll type 40 space 6, which is 40 feet 6 inches. Press enter, and it places a wall at 40 feet 6 inches automatically. Now I can pull down and place the next wall. So I'll make this wall 26 feet. Pull and continue on for the south wall. And as I get to near where I started, you'll see that it snaps to the end of the beginning wall. When you see that snap line, you can tell that Revit is aligning it for you, and you see the magenta X. That tells me that I am aligned with my beginning point, and I can click again to end that wall. And then as I pull up, it snaps to the end of the wall that I began with, and I can still click again, and I have walls in place. Click Modify, and I've finished my exterior wall layout. All right, so I have my exterior walls in place. Now I can place a few interior walls for demonstration purposes. So I go back to my wall command, select the wall options, pull the drop-down menu, and if you scroll down, you'll see you have other options here that you can choose from. Avoid choosing generic walls for your models. Those are going to have to be changed later if you do use them, because the generic walls have no structural properties added to them, so that you won't have any type of specific wall there. It doesn't have any information attached to it. So try to choose the actual types of walls that you're going to be using. This interior 4 3/4 inch partition is a good basic interior wall partition that's a correct width. So you can go with that typically, unless you have something else in mind. Click the 4 3/4 inch partition, and then hover over your exterior walls. And as you notice, you can see the temporary dimensions light up, and that helps you place that interior partition in the correct location. Now, you can always move these later, so if you just kind of choose where you want that partition to go, and then as you finish, you would click on Modify, and it places it. And then we have an interior partition and exterior walls in place. Now, you can notice there's no real detail here. And what we need to do is change our detail level. So if you look here at the bottom of your screen, you'll notice the scale of our view here. And then right next to that is the detail level option. So if you select that, you'll notice that you can change from coarse, which is what our model is by default, to either medium or fine. Fine will give you much more specific hatch information for your architectural components. So there we have started the walls of our building. And I'm just going to go over a few more things here in this toolbar that you see at the bottom of your screen. Actually, information bar, it's not the toolbar, but you have your detail level, and then here you have your visual style. options. And if you select that, that's what we'll get to that later as we get a little bit more information in place on our model, but that's an important option to know where it's located. We have other things here. You have crop views that we'll talk about as we get more in depth in our modeling. We can reveal or hide elements in our model. So there's some things down here that are important to know where they are and know how to get to them. But we've begun our model. We've drawn some interior partitions and we've changed our detail level. So that's where you start when you get started with a drawing. Now, we talked earlier about families, and with your families, we are going to add a few things really quickly just to see how they work. So if you wanted to add some casework, you could choose a piece of casework here, click and drag to your model, and when you get to a location that can host that piece of casework, then you'll see it pop up right next to your cursor. If you press the space bar, it rotates the casework. Now your cursor it's going to be at the back of that base cabinet, so you can know ahead of time kind of what you're doing and where you're placing it. There we go. I'll just place it on that wall right there. Click modify, and now in plan view, I see that I have a base cabinet in place on my model. And that's how you would insert anything that you see over here in your Families browser.